Your fascia is dry and keeps your body trapped in the past through a mechanism you never noticed operating. The tissue has lost glide between layers, turned fluidity into permanent friction, and now holds time as a continuous internal load. The morning stiffness in your trunk, the locked hips, the breath that never reaches depth, all of that reveals fascial micro-immobility, the state in which the present tries to enter but finds space occupied by old temporalities crystallized within the body itself. You are going to learn a specific movement that rehydrates the fascia and gives the tissue back its ability to glide again. And you are going to discover why drinking water never touched what was really stuck. There is a brutal difference between hydrating the organism and restoring mechanical fluidity in the fascial layers. That difference explains why so many approaches failed where this movement resolves. Stopping this video now means losing the exact sensation of internal melting that is going to happen in your body in the next few minutes. When the tissue finally yields and time starts to circulate again, the past hurts precisely where the glide stopped, and in moments you will locate that point inside you. Fascial micro-immobility happens when layers of tissue that should glide freely lose that capacity and begin to stick to each other. The body adopts containment as a survival strategy at a specific moment, but that containment is never undone because the nervous system does not recognize that the threat has ended. The fixation does not live in thoughts or memories. It lives in the friction between fascial planes that remain adhered even when there is no longer any reason for it. Movement economizes. The breath never drops. The gesture remains incomplete because the tissue sustains an old defense as if the danger was still active. In Hermetic traditions, the fascia was recognized as the living parchment of the temple, the substance where each unresolved experience is inscribed when the flow is interrupted. Thoth taught that the body records what consciousness could not process through circulation, and that rigidity in the temple is born when memory meets obstruction instead of passage. What stops circulating crystallizes, what loses mobility becomes weight, and time begins to be carried as internal mass instead of lived as a crossing. The mechanism works like this. When the nervous system detects threat, it reduces variation of movement to preserve safety. The body freezes into minimal patterns that spend less energy and expose less vulnerability. The fascia follows that restriction, reducing mechanical hydration between layers, increasing adhesion between tissues. What was fluid mobility becomes protective economy, and that economy persists even after the danger ceases, because letting go continues to be interpreted as risk by the entire organism. Research in fascial neuroscience discovered something surprising. Connective tissue does not act only as a passive structure. It responds actively to prolonged autonomic states, modifying viscosity, capacity to transmit tension, relationship with the nervous system. When the body remains in silent vigilance, the fascia dries functionally, not from absence of liquid, but from lack of living movement that pumps fluid between layers. Friction increases, glide decreases, and the past persists exactly where the tissue stopped moving. That explains why you wake up locked, why choices seem to demand disproportionate effort, why creativity jams, why the present never seems to fit fully inside your body. Fascial micro-immobility keeps you inhabiting an organism that is still reacting to something that has already ceased. And while the tissue does not recover glide, time remains fixed internally. There is someone who lived precisely this condition, someone whose story will reveal how the past gets fixed in the body when movement is interrupted, and how everything reorganizes when the tissue finally flows again. Cynthia was 45 years old and worked as a housekeeper in a hotel in the South Zone. She woke up at 5 in the morning every day, and before even getting out of bed, she already felt her trunk locked, as if she had spent the entire night contracted. Her hips refused to yield when she stood up. Her breathing stayed high in the chest. Every movement seemed to cost more energy than it should. She had learned to live with it, treating everything as occupational fatigue. But deep down, she knew something deeper was operating, something no amount of rest ever touched. The routine at the hotel was exhausting. Hours spent over changing sheets, cleaning bathrooms, carrying stacks of towels through the corridors. What disturbed her most was not the physical tiredness, but the feeling that her body never relaxed completely, even on days off. She noticed she avoided certain postures, that she economized gestures, that her breathing never reached the pelvis. On the rare occasions she tried to stretch, her body resisted in a strange way, as if it were afraid to open. Relationships did not last, not for lack of affection, but because she could never give full presence. A part of her always remained contained, protected, inaccessible. Cynthia tried regular massages for a few months, thinking the stiffness was only accumulated muscle tension. She also did physical therapy on medical recommendation, but the exercises never reached the root of the problem. She sought therapy to understand whether the containment was emotional, and although she understood a lot about her history, her body remained locked in the same way. None of that was wrong, but none of it reached the layer where the past really got fixed, where the tissue had lost mobility and turned old protection into permanent friction. It was during a coffee break in the hotel's service corridor that Cynthia had a conversation that would change everything. One of the regular guests, a woman who always left the room impeccable and used to thank her for the work, noticed that Cynthia massaged her lower back frequently. The woman commented that she recognized that stiffness, that she had carried the same lockup for years until she discovered that the problem was not in the muscles, but in the fascia that had lost its ability to glide. She mentioned a specific movement, simple, that rehydrated the tissue from the inside out, something that did not require strength or flexibility, only presence and the right rhythm. Cynthia was intrigued, especially when the woman described the sensation of internal melting she had experienced, as if layers that were stuck had finally started to move. She asked for more details, wrote the instructions on a napkin, and decided to try that very night. Cynthia lay down on the bedroom floor, followed what she had written down, and began with low breath anchoring. In the first minutes, nothing seemed to happen. But then, something changed. Her breath dropped in a way she hadn't felt in years. Her solar plexus softened, and for the first time in a long time, she noticed internal space where before there had only been compression. Her hips yielded slightly, and a strange sensation of warmth began to spread between her ribs and her pelvis. She felt the tissue beginning to glide, layer by layer, as if the body had finally been given permission to let go of something it had been holding for decades. What happened after that moment, what Cynthia discovered in the following days when she continued the practice, is exactly what you are going to experience now in your own body. The movement you are going to do now is not stretching, It is not strength. It is not flexibility. It is restoration of tissue glide through rhythmic pressure and conscious micro-movement. You are going to rehydrate the fascia mechanically, giving the tissue back its ability to move in layers, to pump fluid, to release the friction that keeps the past fixed. Start lying on the floor, knees bent, feet planted. Place one hand on the lower belly, right above the pubic bone, and the other on the sternum. Breathe normally and observe where the air goes first. Low breath anchoring is what allows the nervous system to yield without collapsing. Inhale slowly through the nose, directing the air toward the hand that is on the lower belly, as if you were filling the pelvis from the inside. Exhale through the mouth, gently, without forcing. Do not push the breath down, invite it. The difference is subtle but essential. Pushing maintains guard, inviting allows glide. Repeat this 10 times, slowly, paying attention to each descent of the air. You will notice the breath beginning to reach places that were blocked for a long time. The solar plexus may soften, the ribs may expand laterally, the pelvis may yield a little more with each cycle. When the breath is dropping with less resistance, you will introduce slow, spiraled mobilization. Keep the knees bent, feet on the floor. Let the knees fall gently to the right, without forcing, just allowing the weight to take them. The spine will rotate along, but not fully. Let the twist happen as far as the body accepts without locking. Breathe there, 3 deep breaths. Feel the tissue beginning to wake up between the ribs and the pelvis, as if layers that were stuck began to recognize each other again. Return to center slowly, pause, and take the knees to the left. Same thing, 3 breaths, allowing the tissue to open without aggression. Repeat this spiraled movement 3 times to each side, always respecting the body's rhythm. You may notice internal warmth beginning to spread, a sensation of space increasing between the pelvis and the diaphragm, spontaneous, micro-size arising. These are signs that the fascia is beginning to rehydrate, that internal pumping is working again. Some bodies will need smaller range, others will be able to rotate a bit more, and that does not matter. What matters is glide happening between layers, not the distance traveled by the movement. If the body resists too much, decrease the range. If it is yielding easily, you can go a little deeper, but without ever forcing. Now you will add gentle compression to the movement. When the knees fall to one side, place the hand on the opposite side on the side of the waist, right below the ribs. Apply a gentle pressure, as if you were helping the tissue reorganize, not pushing but inviting. Breathe there, letting the pressure of the hand dialogue with the breath. This creates a pumping effect that restores mechanical hydration in the tissue. The fascia is not rehydrated by water circulating in the blood. It is rehydrated by movement that creates variation of pressure, suction, release. You are teaching the body to do that again. Do this 3 more times to each side, alternating, always with the hand applying gentle pressure on the opposite side. Feel the warmth increasing, the sensation of melting spreading. The solar plexus may release completely. The hips may yield in a way you haven't felt in years. The breath may drop without obstacle. This is the sensation of fascial micro-immobility beginning to undo, of layers regaining glide, of time returning to circulation because the tissue stopped sustaining friction. You are beginning to leave the past through the body, not through the mind. Before continuing to the next phase, there is something you need to know about Cynthia. Something that happened in the following days when she kept practicing exactly what you are doing now. Cynthia practiced the movement every night for 3 weeks. In the first days, the change was subtle, but it was there. The morning stiffness decreased, the hips began to yield more easily when she got up. The breath started to drop effortlessly. But what really surprised her was how this affected her life beyond the body. Decisions that had once required days of indecision began to happen with fluidity, as if the internal lock that delayed everything had finally released. She accepted an invitation to go out that she normally would have refused. And for the first time in years, she managed to be fully present, without that part of her that stayed protected, inaccessible. The most concrete transformation happened at work. Cynthia noticed that her body did not end the day as armed as before, that she could sustain posture without excessive effort, that repetitive movements stopped generating that accumulation of tension she carried home. She began to talk more with co-workers, to laugh easily, to take up space in a way that had once seemed impossible. The past had not disappeared, but it had stopped hurting exactly where the tissue now glided. She did not need to revisit memories or understand old narratives. The body simply stopped sustaining time as internal weight. What Cynthia felt in those 3 weeks is exactly what is beginning to happen in your body now. The internal melting, the glide between layers, the sensation of space increasing, the breath finally dropping. You are rehydrating the fascia in the same way she did, and what comes next will deepen this transformation even further. Now you will introduce pulses of compression and release that restore deep pumping in the tissue. Return to the starting position, knees bent, feet on the floor. Place both hands on the sides of the waist, right below the ribs. Inhale deeply, and as you exhale, apply a gentle compression with the hands, as if you were helping the air leave completely. Release the pressure as you inhale. Repeat this 10 times, creating a rhythm of compression and release that mimics the natural pumping the fascia has lost over time. This movement seems simple, but it is extremely powerful. You are teaching the tissue to circulate fluid again, to create variation of pressure that mechanically hydrates the fascial layers. Each compression pushes fluid out, each release draws fluid in, and this repeated cycle restores the capacity for glide that had been lost. You may feel the warmth intensifying, the sensation of space increasing even more, micro-size arising spontaneously. These are signs that the nervous system is accepting the change, that the body is leaving the state of silent vigilance and entering a state of safety that allows true mobility. The integration between breath anchoring, spiraled mobilization, and compression pulses creates a complete effect of fascial rehydration. The breath prepares the nervous system. The spiraled movement awakens the layers. The compression restores the pumping. Together, these 3 elements give the body back the ability to glide, to circulate, to update the present without sustaining the past as internal friction. You are not only releasing tension, you are reorganizing the way the tissue relates to time. What was fixed flows again, what was locked moves again, what was dry becomes hydrated again. The central practice is complete. The tissue has regained glide, the body has returned to deep breathing, the present finally fits fully inside you. Now comes the moment to seal this transformation before the nervous system out of familiarity, tries to return to the old patterns. The sign that the transformation occurred is in the breath that finally reaches the pelvis without obstacle, in the solar plexus that yielded without collapsing, in the sensation of space between the ribs and the hips that did not exist before. You may feel the feet more present on the floor, the trunk less armed, the jaw loose. These markers prove that the tissue has regained glide, that fascial micro-immobility has begun to undo, that the past has stopped being sustained as internal friction. The body has returned to inhabiting the present because the present finally fits fully inside it. To anchor this state, you will create a simple signal gesture you can repeat at any moment. Place the right hand on the lower belly and the left hand on the sternum. Breathe deeply 3 times, feeling the air dropping into the pelvis, and as you exhale the 3rd time, apply a light pressure with both hands simultaneously. Hold that pressure for 3 seconds, then release. This gesture reconnects you to the sensation of internal glide, reactivates fascial pumping, reminds the body that it can yield without danger. It is repeated in less than a minute and works anywhere, discreetly. When you feel the morning stiffness returning, the hips locking again, or the breath shortening in the coming days, do the 2 hands signal gesture and repeat internally as you breathe. The tissue glides, time flows, the present inhabits. This phrase reconnects you with the state of fluidity you have just experienced, and the body responds because now it knows glide. It is not an empty affirmation, it is a somatic instruction anchored in real experience. Use it as many times as needed, especially in the first days, until the body sustains this pattern more naturally. What you have just done in the body will continue to reorganize over the next hours and days. As the tissue consolidates the ability to glide, to pump, to update the present without carrying the past as internal weight, you now hold in the body something that was previously locked, an ability to glide internally that reorganizes the way you inhabit time. The morning stiffness that seemed inevitable ceases to be destiny. The hips that would not yield begin to respond. The breath reaches a depth you had forgotten existed. These subtle changes alter decisions, relationships, presence. The body that has begun to flow again creates a life that moves forward again. Not because you forced external change, but because the tissue stopped sustaining internal friction that kept the past active. The fascial rehydration you experienced in this video is only one layer of what can be restored. There are other regions where memory still fixes itself, other patterns of containment that can be undone, other movements capable of giving the temple back the mobility that turns creation into manifestation. The path does not end here. It deepens with each practice that reconnects tissue, consciousness, and living presence. Maurice Merleau-Ponty wrote, "The body is not in space like things. It inhabits space. When the fascia regains glide, the body stops carrying space as weight and starts inhabiting it as presence. The present is not something you reach. It is something the body can finally sustain when the tissue stops resisting. The Source created the body as a temple capable of receiving, circulating, and manifesting. When the tissue loses mobility, the temple closes. Creation meets obstacle. Consciousness inhabits only fragments of what it could fully occupy. To rehydrate the fascia is to restore the temple's capacity to receive God without friction. to allow life to flow without being interrupted by inherited rigidity or crystallized protection. If this content touched something real in you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also carries rigidity that cannot be explained only by tiredness. This gesture sustains the continuity of this work and allows more people to have access to knowledge that is rarely delivered with this depth. Write in the comments, "I rehydrate my fascia and release the past to inhabit the present." This phrase anchors the experience in the body and in consciousness, transforming what was lived into an internal instruction that the organism recognizes and sustains. If you want to continue exploring this path of tissue release and somatic reorganization, there is other content available that deepens this journey. Click the video that is appearing on the screen. The past stops hurting when the tissue glides again, and time begins to flow again exactly where you allowed the body to finally yield.